We are now, yeah.
Okay.
Legally entitled to tell you that you're recording. We're recording. But anyway, going to welcome you in here. This is episode 2 after a big name change last week to the No Views show. Our guest today, coming live, I believe, from Langley, good friend from the heart of Alberta, Wetaskiwin, joining us today. Great sense of humor, good personality. Tneil, welcome in.
Great welcome. That was good. Yeah.
How are you doing?
Okay. How are you?
Good. I hope for your sake that I don't know if you hit pause on your video, but it's just one big freeze frame of you grinning.
Oh,
which
seriously?
is great. But
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, hopefully it'll sort itself out.
Oh shoot. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I entered full screen. It's just you smiling away, which is fantastic.
No, because I've got a goofy grin at times. So.
Oh, you're mid happiness for sure.
Okay. Well, should I fiddle, or do you want to just keep going?
Just turn your video on and off, or off then back on again.
Let's figure that out. Better? No?
It'll just take a second to come back on. I'm just get a nice TA. Some good radio silence to start. Good television, as they would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you have no video. Did you turn your video back on?
I did, yeah.
Your connection's really good, though, so is the noise.
Now
you know
it's off.
It's not even a big deal. We'll see if it comes back on, but we got you here. The connection's good.
Okay.
So anyway, what I usually like to start off, because, kind of the main reason I started this was to see how everybody's doing in these strange times. I was sent home the 3rd or 4th week of March, I want to say, and it's now almost mid-August. So I know your life is a little different considering that you're a nurse.
Yeah.
But how has this whole change? How's that started for you, and how do you feel about the changing of things?
I was really it's really fortunate for me that I got to experience kind of all of the different phases. At least I think it's the different phases. So I was isolated initially for 2 weeks because of some symptoms, and then so I was just twiddling my thumbs, reading books, no Wi-Fi at the time, but then it picked up, and then it was the crazy busyness in the hospital. I even experienced the no PPE for a bit, which is really like a moral dilemma. But at the same time, I'm now in a really good unit, and we're supported, and now it's kind of back to normal life almost. Now it's almost exciting because it's like at least the change has, first of all, made me get better at texting.
In what sense? You want to expand on that?
Well, like, that's the only avenue now to talk to people or to communicate, to connect. So I had to really make time to reply, to make plans for phone calls, all of it. And then from what you had said just a little bit earlier, how's your experience with online connection or texting and everything?
Well, what I was going to ask you is, do you find it better or worse now that you're more adept at using these things, or being better at texting even per se?
Better or worse? How? Just to
preferences? You, because you answer it, because it's almost the same question you just asked me. So it's better or worse in your own mind? Because I got some pretty heavy convictions on the online world.
Let's see. So I also don't like it. I don't like online. I can't ever express how I'm really feeling or how it's coming across. But I am getting better at like maybe making plans to like phone call or have a socially distanced picnic or something.
Yeah.
But the one thing that has been like a change during this COVID is my priorities and friendships, I guess.
Okay. In
and
what
what
way?
and like what we do and what we talk about. So it was me, my roommate, and her boyfriend for a really long time. And we would just walk down the park and have some juice and and then we just talk about these deep things.
Yeah.
And then there was the few times where I've actually met with other people and we aren't talking deep things or actual honest things, and it's just very shallow. And then I was like, dang, I want to go back to the deep talks or the talks about things we don't normally talk about. And so then, at least for me, that's now shifted. So in regards to online, I'm better at it and I've adapted to it, but at the same time, in person is best. It's just who I choose to hang out with now, almost.
So do you think that's a positive? That like I try to refrain from using the word expose, but I use it as a very like basic term. Like it kind of exposes you not to the communication lines, but to the things you'd rather talk about or the things you enjoy talking about versus not talking about.
Yeah. 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 And then to realize that some people they'll be just those friendships that you just don't talk
Mm-hmm.
about important things, or things at least you care about, and
Yeah,
not.
because it just may not be important to them, but it's obviously important to you.
Yeah. And then to surround yourself with people that are interested in learning and interested in growing, and to talk about those things, because if you're passionate about something, you should talk about it in normal
Yeah, no,
conversation.
I agree. Absolutely. Because like what I was going to say, and it's not a perfect question, but it's close. Like what drives me nuts is it's becoming so normal and we're so used to these things that the one thing that COVID has done, like, when you said, how have I found it very interesting more than anything. Because at the start I was one of those people who was all over it. Like, hey, let's stay indoors. This thing's, super infectious. Uh, we don't know a lot about it. So let's buy the powers at hand time in that sense. Uh, so my life hasn't changed that much, and still the ability to work from home, and incredibly fortunate to be employed. And at some point, I'd like to get back. So I kind of want to know what your everyday looks like being a nurse in the middle of this, later in the days now. But on the texting and communication thing, I think it's like everything else that we plug ourselves into digitally. You have to strike the right balance. Where for me, texting is straight up. It's like email. Like I just don't. I found myself way more anxious in the past year or 2 years by reading text as I would reading conversation or talking to people in person. And sometimes people just pick up the phone and text you back, two sentences because it's all they have time for. Like they're busy, you're doing things, and maybe you're expecting something more, or that's exactly what you're expecting, and it's good to go. But I mean, I was even saying it, prior to going live here, like I've had people bring up texts that I've sent them from weeks or months ago, and not in a productive way or in a or a reminder way. It's like, well, this is what you said. And one of the main reasons I think I started this entire thing and why it drives me in the passion sense is, what do we think is genuinely us, or what is, I guess, real in a sense? Because like you said, these conversations you have in person, and actually even being able to see people like online, you can see the reaction. You can't get a reaction on a phone, text message. You can on a call, and even calling's better because you can, we're all humans and we're adults. Like you can kind of read when there's pause in the conversation, or, people are hesitant or they're sad or happy. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's things we can recognize. So for me, what is kind of painful, it's just like we're bombarded with all this technology. So in terms of striking the balance, like even at work, I have to find, my screen time yesterday, every Sunday it pumps out the report. 6 hours and 50 minutes I averaged last week. And that's the same reaction I have internally though, because I'm like, like seven, like a full day. You're spending a full work day, like without a lunch even, or with lunch that's an extra 20 minutes on my phone. So if I was to break it down by like what's productive and what's not, 10% of that's probably worth my time. 30% of that's probably Instagram and Twitter. And the rest is like me searching the web. And to what avail, who knows? I mean, but like what have you done differently since, things have been restricted, I guess? Like what do you find your time being maybe not wasted on, but spent on in what would be considered like your spare time?
It's funny actually, because when I was listening to your episode last time, and you said like 5 hours, and so now I guess it's 6 hours screen time.
6:50. It's a shade under 7.
It made me then check mine, and I think it was five hours, and I was like shocked, just because I remember even putting a limit on my phone before COVID, and it was like an hour. I was like, okay, 40 minutes of this and 20 minutes of that, and that's all. And then somehow I don't remember turning it off, but it stopped telling me. But yeah, like 5 hours now, daily. That I was like, dang, that's a lot. Even though you do a lot on your phone.
35 hours a week.
Yeah.
Like that to me is the concerning part.
Yeah. But I guess for me though, recently I've been listening to lots of podcasts and reading on my phone. So I'm like, okay, hopefully that's lots of it, right?
Yeah, no, but that's exactly it, right? You got to find that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And so at least for things that I've been doing, I guess, is those things. What else? I guess
maybe not even like. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say maybe even not like, because it's a pretty broad question to say how's your life changed. It's kind of like asking somebody what their favorite movie is.
Right.
But like I'll give you an example. For me, like I didn't realize how much time going to the gym took up in my everyday life prior to all this. Because at very least, like my workout's a minimum of an hour, and getting changed and showering on both ends is probably 10 or 15 minutes each. So we're looking at an hour and a half minimum, and then you add on another 20 minutes of travel time. So it's a full 2 hours of my day, like every day, and that's what it was. And when all this hit, like it's not that I didn't know it was a big thing in my life, but all of a sudden I thought, okay, you got to now, like you have to fill in that 2 hour slot. And if you can't fill it in with exactly what that was, what do you do? Like where do you put your energy next to get the screen time down, or feel like you're spending energy, not wasting energy?
Ooh, spending energy rather than wasting energy.
Well, again, like wasting, teach their own, but that's my big thing is how do you spend your time? Like, do you, at the end of the day, when you look at yourself and you go, hey, am I happy with, even if they're little things like what you did today? So I guess, yeah, if there was a question in this, like, what have you found the biggest difference, or maybe what have you prioritized in your own life that has changed because of the changes we're in right now?
Right. Well, I guess it goes back to what I was saying is how like I've now prioritized my time. So like there were people that I would hang out with just to hang out with, but now it's changed to a focus of can I deepen this relationship, or do I get to the wall that's as far as it's gonna go? So it's a lot more intentional time, I guess.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And then even, for example, maybe a group of people are hanging out, and I could show up and hang out with them, but it's going to be a lot more shallower talk because it's a huge group, or not huge, but like, group of people. And then maybe they're doing something I don't even really enjoy. So like sports. And I'm like, so it's going to like, do I want to spend my time like with some of the people that I won't grow closer with, some of the people I am close with, and it's also doing something that I don't really enjoy necessarily or would want to spend my time. So maybe I'll decide to do a one-on-one coffee date with someone instead, or go outside. I've been gardening a lot. Hey,
hey, here we go. What's in the garden?
There's a lot of corn right now, and it's atrocious to weed.
Corn is a long haul. I'm pretty sure my neighbors grow corn, and it's not something you can grow overnight.
Yeah. So even to be okay to spend that energy, because it is, yeah, part of our rental agreement to do the lawn work here. But
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Well, I mean, twofold. You gotta
Yeah.
upkeep, but at the same time, you're gardening now. So.
Yeah, exactly. And now I kind of know how. Or like, what was it? I noticed a sheep missing, and then my and so I texted my landlord. I was like, "Where did Henry go?" and, and she's like, "Oh, we had to move him, but thanks for noticing. Like, oh, you're such a good farmer." And I was like, "Oh, okay, good." Anyways,
But even those things, like even that relationship with your landlord, like that's. I mean, the one thing. This is what I want to ask you too, because I'm very similar, and I think it is one of the reasons. I don't want to say I've lost friends or gained friends, but
Mhm.
one of the biggest things that I talk about all the time is like I have to be able to give you the same energy that I expect back.
Mm,
So for me, it's just trying to find where I can match that.
right.
So the reason I say that is because how you're stating it sounds like they're the same idea in terms of they're connected. Where I would say to you, you can still go and have those shallow conversations. Like sometimes it's nice just to have a beer with people you
Yeah.
just hang out with and you just shoot the breeze and talk about whatever, just because you want to be out and be in with these things. Because on the flip side of that extreme is like 5 days a week, you're having nothing but like existential talks and,
Mm,
what's going on in my life and like these crazy conversations,
yeah.
which might, be phenomenal from like a learning and passion perspective, but also that's going to drive like that's a lot of time and a lot of energy being put into
Yeah.
those things. So I guess do you find like do you still need both? Like, because I would say you got to have a little bit of both in some.
And yeah, no, I do need both. But the one thing, at least, as being um, a nurse in this time, is that I don't have that much time, depending,
Yeah.
or I'm higher risk. So it's choosing the people to risk
Yes.
with the reward, right?
And how
And
have you
that
found? How have you found like inviting people, like even your friends, knowing that you're a nurse? Like, have you found it hard because everybody's kind of got their own, I guess, perspective on it?
yeah, but at least some people have been so kind and like they'll keep their distance or they don't care if I wear a mask or even like what was it there was like some I think they were offering me candy and they were like and then it was like in their hand and I was just like I'm sorry and then they're like oh sorry and then they like were super considerate and like tried to make it best to like share but safely
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
um and then there's people that don't care and they just do whatever but like with yeah, they're usually very respectful of me trying to be careful and then also spend my time with people. Um, but yeah, there definitely does need to be a balance of the all of the energy, deep conversations, and not. But it's just that also it's for me it's usually the same people, right? So I've
Yes.
had so I've had deeper conversations with this person, and then I can hang out with them again, and it doesn't have to be deep. It can be something fun that
Yeah.
we're doing, right?
Almost like that inner circle bunch, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
Like I don't tell anybody my problems, but that's just because I'm selfish. But well,
What? What?
well, no, like I do. Like I take care of my mental and physical health. But like somebody asked me the other day, I thought it was a brilliant question. They said, "Does it frustrate you seeing people who you think have like a lesser burden that they carry, or from what you can see, like their complaints just aren't real complaints? Like, does that make sense? Like their first world problems. How it was stated essentially was like, imagine you're going through some of the hardest times of your life. When you see somebody else's problems and somebody else comes to you and explains how bad their life is from their perspective, does it infuriate you, or do you not care about it?
That's a hard question. Why were they asking you that?
Well, because we were talking. Well, I'll explain kind of how it came up. So we are talking about social media, right?
Mhm.
And Instagram. So how it came about was like, some Instagram influencers or these people who have a large following, and they, despite the pandemic, despite, the equity gap, like despite like genuine, problems like Beirut, like heartbreaking scenes in Lebanon, like all of these things. And then somebody's like, oh, this is my third flat tire this month. And you're like, part of you wants to be like, suck it up, figure it out. But the bigger part of me, at least, like how I answered the question I said was, it doesn't bother me at all, because you have to understand how big somebody's problem is to them. Because your problem may be like, my problems might be mountain sized to you, like outside looking in, but to me, it's just a hill. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get over that. I'll figure it out. Like, that's not hard. And vice versa. I might look at you and your problem might be a hill to me. And I'm like, yeah, figure it out. But you're like, no, this needs to be solved. I can't figure it out. I've been trying to, get through it and get whatever. Because for me, I always think about the positive and the negative. Like, you can't be happy for people and also envy them, because you just genuinely have to be happy for somebody. Like, even if it's a good break or they worked for it or they didn't get it, like, that's their life. You can't control that. Like, that doesn't concern you. So why not be happy for that person? So the same thing, like, somebody can't, it's why we like seeing people fall from grace and, like, eat a shit sandwich every once in a while, because part of you goes, but part of you goes, yeah, that's right. Like, now you know how hard my life is. But that's so incredibly selfish that, like, if you adopt that mentality, you're always going to be thinking that things are way worse or you can be better than somebody. Like, I just don't think it's a good way to live. So when that person asked me that question about, like, does it frustrate you when you see other people's problems and you think about what you're going through in your own life, does it bother you? And I was like, never. Like, that didn't even cross my mind to compare my problems to somebody else's, because it's such a losing mentality. And if they genuinely wanted help, and it was literally like, if it just like their shoes needed to be tied, and that's like as big as their problem is. No, but like, just for an extreme exaggeration example,
Yeah.
who am I not to try and help that person? Versus me going, I got my own problems. Like, just tie your shoe, figure it out. But that's the thing, right? Like, so that's where I think kind of where we're at in this whole thing is everybody's getting online and telling everybody how to live and do these things. And it's like, we already, like, I'm pretty naive at 25 to say I knew already how well I had it. But I'm like, yeah, I was going to run 30 events, try and raise $15,000 for charity. I'd like to do more volunteer work. Like, I had all these things lined up that I wanted to do. And then people still have the nerve to tell me how to live. And it's like, show me something. Show me that you're trying, or show me that energy. Like, it just, I guess it all comes back to me is like, show me that you're outside of your car trying to push it versus sitting in it and complaining about it. Like, just show me that you're willing to change it, and that'll be the change. Anyway, you must have some thoughts on that. I'm kind of off on a bit of a tangent.
No, it's good. I feel that's so kind. Like, I was picturing someone with a shoe that's untied, and like you have no idea what their life is like, but then they just can't get the energy to tie their shoe. Anyway,
right, but that's exactly it. Because to them, it's like they're just blown up, and the last thing is like, you're kidding me, my shoe's untied.
Yeah.
But if you're just walking by as like that friend, you're like, yeah, I can help you with that.
Oh, yeah.
But even though, like, you might have 15 broken shoes, like, you got your own things to deal with. Anyway, pardon me.
Yeah. No, that's the goal, hey? I want to be like that.
But that's like, that to me, I think is the only way to generate like a genuine amount of change, is to just, if everybody would shut up for a minute, eat all their memes, eat all their quotes, eat everything, and go, what can I do today? What is one thing I can do to either improve my own life mentally or physically, or somebody else's? If people did that indefinitely, the world would be a better place. But instead, we're just a hypocritical society that's drilled into social media, where we constantly expose ourselves every day.
Yeah. One thing that actually comes to mind, kind of, it was a thought I think from before, but to be allowed to change your mind, or to change your perspective, to retract a sentence, you know what I mean? That's
the process of learning.
Yeah. And then for people to be okay with that, even, you know what I mean? Like,
it's huge.
One thing, I was talking to someone, and they kept on coming, like, asking me questions, and then me saying, I need to think about that. Let me think about it, and then I'll give you an answer. And then he was like, okay, you don't need to have the right answer. Like, what are you thinking right now? You can
Yes. Yeah.
say what your thoughts are and then figure it out and be like, you know what, actually, I don't think that I said it, but just
Yeah.
ignore that part, right? So I think that's another thing, even with all of this, even in learning, even if anything I say on this podcast, like I might change my mind, like once you
No,
learn, once you figure it out.
when this comes up 20 years later, we're coming with torches straight to your front door. Don't care where you're working. Don't care what you're doing. We're canceling you.
Oh my gosh. But right? So yeah.
But that's exactly it. Like you have to be, so how this ties into my texting thing when people bring it up, you have to be able to let people be dynamic. Now, it's not saying like if you do things illegally or criminally or unethical, first of all, you have to live with that more than anybody else does. And at the end of the day, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, am I happy with these decisions, whatever they are?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like one of the things I talked about with my sister in the first episode, I'm pretty sure was like if you look at me visually, white male, blue eyes, works in finance, been gifted a whole lot in my general life is one part of it. And then as well, it's like, okay, but I still had to like write those exams, get my degree, get my other certifications, like, find a career, go on this path, do these things. So the way I explained it to her, and this is probably an unpopular statement unless you understand it, is like the way I explained it to her, I said, imagine a gay person coming up to me and lighting me up without giving me an absolute chance to say anything. I don't care what walk of life you come from. I'm going to have to assume you're a complete jerk. Whether you're gay or straight or black or white or Asian, whatever you identify as. And I just want you to be internally happy. I'm not a bad person. There's not a whole lot of people I know that are. But it's when people just jump to these things or, oh, we need to cancel this person or, oh, we need to get this out. It's like, let's just let the dust settle. We're used to getting everything in 24 hours, 12 hours. Like, yeah, if something went wrong years prior or even days prior and we need to address it, we should. But to not go on both sides or to not at least give due process, and on both sides, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of egregious systems right now. And if we go south of the border, there's 10 times more of the egregious systems.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to have like those starter conversations to get everybody to a point where everybody's comfortable with each other. And then you can start to go, okay, Alex might have said something slightly offside and egregious, but one, his intent was different, but also ask him about ask him about it now because his perspective has changed. Like his experiences have changed. Like see how he feels now. But it's like when you don't talk to a friend for, I don't know. I mean, we're not that old yet, but like older people, and they're like, I haven't talked to that person in 10 years. And I'm like, okay, why? And then they're like, well, we had it out with each other over, the course of 3 or 4 months. And it's like, and you've never talked to them again. You've never addressed that. You guys are just going to take that to the grave at this point. Like, how can you be comfortable with just, yeah, it's like, there's a classic quote where an idea to a moron appears like a light in a room without a switch. It just turns on. Like it's just all of a sudden, it's the greatest thing that's ever appeared and it's true to them. And it's like, okay, but there's probably a reason that turned on if you want to look at it that way, or in general, there's probably more to it. So yeah, I don't know. It's so incredibly complicated. But I agree. Like that's the biggest point of this show is like, you have to be able to give people a chance in whatever it is. And if you can't, how are they going to give you a chance?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm not looking for an example because it's not a cheap ploy, but I don't like examples. But I don't know, you're a nurse. Like, have you had people yell at you at work yet? That don't work there?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Like during all this, like, hey, why aren't you wearing a mask? Or why didn't you wash your hands? Like,
depending, yeah, well, even like family members, it's hard, right? Because they have to be all over the phone, right?
yeah.
And then also patients and yeah. Yeah, it just comes down to like how you carry yourself and how you just have some grace for the other person and for yourself, right? Like just like
Just everybody needs to just take a breath. It's one collective breath.
Yeah. I love how you said to you only know like a few bad people or something like that, or you said
Yeah,
something.
yeah, well, yeah. Like the way I see it is like 99 people out of 100 you meet are great. Like,
Yeah, or they want to be good. They want,
yes,
right? And then just because of circumstance or situation,
yes,
they're coming across this way, but they're probably not meaning to. But if they are, then that means that there's something else going on internally for them that they need to
right,
figure out,
right.
right? So
But
if
that,
they are envying someone, or um then like, do they really love the person? And
mhm.
then that's just issues that they need to figure out for them too, right?
And that's exactly it. Like, and all social media I find does is heighten everybody's sense of pain, because if you look at it from an outside perspective, it's a highlight reel. It's always been a highlight reel. But then the other question this person asked me was like, do you think people are genuinely happy that are like posting all these photos? And it was like my same response to the phone thing. I'm like, you got to strike a balance. I'm like, I use it only to, I don't know, post a photo every 2 or 3 months. And yeah,
Yeah.
and it's usually some banging photo. And, it's a beautiful, like, it's just an absolute beauty in my head. But I don't like, if it had 0 likes, I've been liking my own photos since 2012. And
I love that.
people are like, you like your own photos? I'm like, how do you not? You lived it.
You posted it.
I'm like, you lived it. First of all, pump your numbers up. That's a free vote. Like, you don't think Trudeau goes and votes for himself? Like, this is not new. Like, this was not created to see who could get the most amount of likes. For me,
Yeah.
what this was created for was to share these moments in my life, like a general scrapbook. And ever since this kid in grade 10 did this brilliant speech about, he called it like the Church of Immortality. That's what he referred to as the internet, where he was
Oh,
like,
really? Oh, wow.
where everything, it was really well done. I should actually have him on. I'll have to invite him. It's been a while. Anyway, the gist of his thing, like this is how impactful it was to me at the time, was like, with any search, you can find it, and anything you upload remains. So if you want to live forever, put everything online, because
Right.
your spirit, your legend, your things will never die. And I
Right.
was like, I'm sitting there in grade 10, 2000. I was just like, dude, what? I was like, thinking to myself, you're right, though, in the sense that it's almost like a second brain. You don't have to remember anything. You don't have to remember memories. You can just scroll to them and go, when was I in
Mm-hmm.
BC? Oh, it was in June. Let me
Yeah.
go for a photo, spark it up. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, yeah, I remember everything that happened. Or maybe you have a video of it. Like, it's just so strange to me that that's kind of where we're at in terms of, now I forgot where I started this point, uh, in the digital realm. Uh,
Well, one thing actually, I just have a thought. Do you remember back whenever we had that chat about social media being almost like a dating profile of how your friends should post things about you, right?
yes,
Do you
yes, I
remember?
do.
And
Yeah,
then,
I do. No, I still think
like,
it's a brilliant idea.
I've
You
been
should
sharing.
explain the premise for the folks at home.
Let's see. It was kind of like how in on Tinder, or you have your pictures and you do a description of yourself, is like how it is now.
Yes.
But for social media being like, or having an own app, or I don't know, it could be other people would be posting pictures or having a description of who you are. And then so when someone's looking at your profile, they're seeing what all your friends think of you.
Yeah.
Um, and what they,
And vice
and
versa.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I always loved that idea of just like, because then, first of all, then it steers away from the people that don't like, that aren't great with their friends. And then you
Yeah.
know that this person's genuine and you can trust them more. The only thing is just hope everyone's, anyway, because then it's almost like reviews too, now that I'm thinking about it.
No, it is, but what you're gonna, but this is why it's brilliant, I think, because you're gonna understand your friends like you and they
Right.
have a genuine
Usually.
interest in your happiness. And if
Yeah.
that's part of it, like say it was my profile, and it was like, you can talk to Tyler, you can talk to Tim, and you can talk to John, and those are the three friends that I have chosen that all
What?
have a bit of a different perspective, like on mine, right?
Where? Who are
And
these
then
people?
they're made up names, made up all three.
Seriously?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I have some friends who also have that name, but you were looking at me like you were waiting to hear one name that you probably recognize.
Yeah.
But again, I said
Okay,
before the
sorry.
show, we're not here to sewer anybody. So
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
right, and for yours, it's Jill, Jane, and Janet, and it's
Okay.
those three people, right? And then you can go, hey, I want to talk to you two about what is this guy like? Does he like sports? Does he like to be inside? Does he read? Like my friend really likes coffee shops. She just loves coffee. Her grandma was Ecuadorian. Like just these things, whatever. I'm making a fake profile for you and fake background story. But like these things, right? And then you could go, oh yeah, actually, like yeah, my buddy drinks coffee every day. It's actually super annoying. And every time we go on a vacation, he's like, yeah, I got to find the perfect coffee shop. So maybe you go, oh, perfect. That would tick some boxes. And you would be able to have those conversations like between the two friends groups and go, hey, we think this girl would be a good match. And we would say, and your girlfriends would say to you, hey, we think this guy's a good match. And it would be almost like as if you guys had all met in that group of 8 or 6. And, you already have that underlying. I mean, one, I genuinely think it'd be safer if it was set up properly. Where like if you actually had a verified account, like even if you were a friendship account on the dating site or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're right, it does get sticky because it does become a bit of a review process. But what was Tinder before? An instant review process.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
at least you're trying to add that layer of depth. You and I had the same conversation about dating apps where you could tick off like what your religion was, what your sign was, politically, like all of these things.
You can do that, but I don't really remember if we chatted about it or not.
Well, what's your opinion on that in general? Do you think that's better for people or worse for people to have that option to pre-fill?
It depends on. I think sure, but it just makes people care about things they didn't think they cared about, right?
Certainly.
Depending. So like yeah, like I don't care about signs. I don't care about what's it called? I think it was like drinking socially or something
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
Things
Yes.
like that. That like if people nowadays put so much focus in. So like what was it? Someone was saying like even if they did, I think smoking socially, they're like, I'm not
Which
gonna.
is a lie. Nobody's smoked socially. Sorry.
What?
Cigarettes, weed,
No.
absolutely.
Okay, but what about cigars? Like, so for example, I was thinking
Not
cigars
smoking.
socially. Well, anyways, but like people think.
What are you hanging out in yachts in your spare time? Eating a lot of cigars?
I love cigars. Okay.
Oh, there you go. Oh, wow. Pardon me.
So in my mind, like you don't want to say never. Never is such a like an
I agree.
absolute statement.
But
Anyway.
even on the drinking, because it's like,
Yeah.
say it's like casually, socially, a lot.
Yeah.
First of all, not ever going to put, even though I was a raging alcoholic and I'm trying to match with you, it's not what I'm leading with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get hammered all the time, like every weekend. But yeah, I might get absolutely like egregiously drunk 3 or 4 times a year. But that's also not socially because I spend 90% of the other time trying to work out and get healthier and get my cardio into shape where I can't have a couple casuals here and there. For me, like it's definitely what I'm trying to accomplish. Three things like you're now assuming that the convictions you hold when you fill them in are equal to the other person. For example, the religion one.
Breaking up. I'm sorry.
Oh no, pardon me.
All I heard was religion one at the last part.
Yeah, sorry, it's breaking up for a little second there. It's probably on my side this time. I forgot to mention it about the 20-minute mark. Your video just popped up, so I've been seeing you.
You can see me now. Okay, good to know.
But the first little bit, and we'll see if it records properly because it is online that we're both there.
Okay.
But the video version might have you just kind of absent as far as visuals for a bit.
That's okay.
I mean, it's all about people listening anyway, more than anything.
Yeah.
But anyway, to finish that point, like I don't carry a faith, but if somebody does, that's not going to be a deal breaker for me.
Right.
But also, if they tick that box, are they like, no, every day I pray, like when I get up and when I go to bed, and I haven't missed church on Sunday for the past 4 years.
Right.
Or somebody who says, no, I'm an incredibly devout Christian, but I don't participate in the organization of the religions. I try and carry myself in a way that I think the scripture reads, or whatever faith you follow. Like, those are two different people, but they both fill in the box. And it's like, it's the same thing. Do you drink once, a week, or do you drink once a day, or do you drink once a year, or do you not drink at all? And even the people who don't drink at all, it's like, okay, do you hate people that drink? Like, it's just so incredibly complicated, I guess. So I don't know, I guess we got a bit of a rant on the dating app thing, but I just find it ties into, like, how are you supposed to gauge how much energy they've put into that and you've put into that? Like, how I explained it to a girl once is, the reason I use it is because all I want to do is take you out for coffee. Because if I can just take you out for coffee in person and we have a conversation, we'll know after the first hour whether or not, I mean, after the first 10 or 15 minutes, you have a pretty good idea if you're going to want to see them again. But after an hour, both of you will have a pretty good idea of kind of who that person is, if you're generally, like, nice, and, if you're okay to be around.
Yeah. Oh, I had two thoughts now.
Pardon me.
No, it's good. Oh, yeah. So to reiterate, that when you meet someone in person, you connect over something that you both like, or both do, and usually all the other little details don't matter. So now in the dating world, all of a sudden that's all you, like, fixate on, and so it's a good thing. I don't know, it depends on how flexible you are. So some of the girls I've talked to, they're so, like, well, okay, I am a little bit too. So if I see a shirtless picture of you in a bathroom, I'm sorry, but I'm not swiping right. But, like, so, like, but other things like that. But, like, for example, even the religion checkbox is, like, there is such a variety of people in that checkbox. So it just depends on how much you want to narrow your focus. And if that's something you super value to have in the relationship that you can talk about openly, or that you'll both be driving toward that, or you want your person to be involved in church or not, right? It's still going to be a toss-up of what's going to happen. But you just have to be okay with that. And then if you want to meet, and you want to chat, right?
No, and I agree. I think it's like, that's the intent of it. But what is happening is the opposite, where, if you give people even more and more options, then you start doing exactly what you said. You look at their bio, you start critiquing every photo, you start looking at the little checkbox, and okay, she's a Leo. Now, did she click that because, she's born in whatever month that is, and just set up her profile? Sure. Or is it because she reads her horoscope every day? And God forbid you bring that up, but that's going to be a deal breaker if you don't know your sign and what's going on in your horoscope.
Oh my goodness. People need to lighten up.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, versus, I think honestly, Tinder in its purest form was probably one of the best, because it was like, all you had was to write a bio, and the minimum requirement was one photo. And I was like, hey, welcome to the battleground. Like, you're going to find a lot of idiots out here, but you also might find some nice people. But at least you're going to have that chat. Versus now, it's like, I might look at a profile and go, okay, like smoking for me is pretty much a deal breaker. Like, if you tick that off, even if it's socially,
really?
Well, weed's fine. Don't care about that.
See, but what if they're talking about weed? You know what I mean? So come on, you gotta.
No, but the dating apps I've used, they've separated them.
Okay.
Which, I mean, probably because, it's legal in Canada, so it, a little bit different in that sense, and it's probably why they opened it up. But yeah, it's just so. The intent is to focus it down so you do have a higher likelihood, because in your head you're like, I need to find this. If this person could just tick all these boxes, they would just be, and then if they were attractive on top of that, I'm fucking golden. But that person who might tick every single box you tick, you might meet them and go, man, I'm going to kill this person. Like, they're almost too alike to me, or they're just super annoying. Like, it's great that they have all these interests, but all they do is dominate the conversation, and I just want them to listen to me.
Oh.
No, but, like, you know what you take everything so literally. All the trying to bring ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll be honest here. So I was talking to my sister, and she told me the show I should start watching, which I have. And it's all about dating.
Yeah.
So this is probably why this is coming up. But like, and it was so interesting how this like girl just got like one tidbit of like advice of just like try to find something you guys both care about in
Yeah.
this like little bit of a date. And then they like connected, and none of the other details mattered, kind of thing. And they just really enjoyed each other's company. Sure, there's like some deal breaker things, but like I don't know, like when
But
we focus.
it's a baseline connection.
Yeah, yeah. And then
It
they like would invite them to something after like not knowing anything about them, but then they would actually show up to the
yes.
next thing they got invited to. I'm like, see, people actually do want to get to know other people. Just gotta invite them and be okay if it doesn't work out. I don't know.
Yes. No, you absolutely have to be all right with anything flopping. But people are afraid to fail. Like, I think the other thing that this has shown us is and I think you and I talked about this at the start, at the start of like COVID, not the start of this. It's the biggest time for our generation and those who would consider themselves like a part of this digital age, in a sense, where you have no other option but to self-reflect.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're being forced to isolate, you're being forced to change your everyday routines to a point where you're starting to get in conversations that aren't even political, but that's people's default. If they're uncomfortable, they just say, don't get political. Where it's, to the point where I was at Canadian Tire yesterday and 9 out of 10 of us in line had a mask on and one guy didn't. And my first thought was like it's a jerk. Like whether or not you want to or not, if you live in Edmonton and you want to shop in indoor retailers, they've made it mandatory.
Really?
You can have your I told you so moment 3 or 6 months later if they go, look, we can't get ahead of this. Vaccines aren't going to happen and we're just going to have to let it go. And then, you can have that. But I guess the one thing that's been so interesting is if you restrict people's idea of freedom, it wears on them in the sense that what we always forget is you have to give up genuine freedom to get what we consider freedom. You have to say to yourself, okay, there's property rules, there's laws, there's responsibilities, there's social contracts that whether or not you feel like you've signed them are in play. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when these things start to come in on ourselves and they say you need to be isolated, you need to watch out for the elderly and those who are more susceptible, it puts pressure on these people to go, was I happy? Was I happy with the way things were or was I not? And what you're realizing or what we're seeing, I think, is a lot of like these visceral reactions to these things and people taking stances on things that don't necessarily need a stance on it, but yeah, they've never been pressured to a point like this where they've had to change in such a way. You're looking at me like you got to give up freedom to get freedom is a painful statement.
No, I'm just I'm chewing on it. Okay. Also, just making my brain hurt a little bit, but that's okay.
But I don't know. This is just like, these are the things I go to bed thinking about. And I just don't think I don't know if people are getting to the depth of why they think they feel the way they are because it's so easy to tune out or just plug into this digital world. Like just spend 6 and fucking 7 hours on your phone. Like, it's a long time. It's a long time.
Yeah, well, and this is going to count to it, by the way.
No, but perfect example. I consider this productive though.
Oh, okay.
So is this screen time by definition? Yes. But this hour, if it takes away from an hour of that little hell device, which again, I mean, phones are great. They do get us a lot of things. But if that kills an hour of what would have been me just romping through Twitter or reading more sad stories around the world or not bettering my perspective in a sense, that's not beneficial versus this, whether or not you feel like you get anything out of it. Pretty much every episode I get to invite whoever I want. It costs me nothing. Wi-Fi connection and a laptop. Got 2 of those things. Bingo. We're done. Mm-hmm. Even the next person I've already lined up, a buddy of mine who lives in Connecticut, and I absolutely really want to hear, first of all, how it's going there.
Yeah.
just in general in the States, but like I think he's in his mid late 30s, got a couple kids, wife. We met in Vermont last year, just kind of out of a fluke, but I was like, same thing, like I'm 25 years old. Yeah, I could talk to everybody who's in and around our age group, in and around our demographic, but that might not get me everything I need to understand. But the more people you talk to, the more you can understand how people feel in general, the better you can get an idea of your own problems for sure, like your own passions even, but you get a general idea of like how everybody's feeling. And then if you can do that, you can start to genuinely conceptualize that you're not alone in thought, where it's like, oh, I'm sad today, but I'm surely not the saddest person on the earth. And I'm surely not the only sad person in general. Like, what can I do to get better? Or how do these people make it through? Like, how have people not succumb to those emotions that just wear you down to the point where you just start to get jaded?
Yeah. And even what you brought up, even if you met this guy in Vermont, and now you're friends, and now you're connected, and now he's potentially coming to your podcast. I love that. Like, I love meeting new people, or like, and then seeing if you click. And like, it's just so hard sometimes though, because some people can be so closed-minded when they go into that coffee shop, or and then they don't want to talk. You know what I mean? But
well, can I ask you a question? Because it just made me think of something.
Okay.
Sure. How do you approach it then? Because a lot of people don't approach it with if this doesn't work out, it was still beneficial. A lot of people are waiting for it not to work out so they can go home and confirm that they wasted their time. It's like picking a new movie versus a movie you've seen. Like, it's that idea of seeking comfort versus being okay to be not only vulnerable, but yeah, if it doesn't work out or if that day sucks, you knew that was a possibility coming in. So how do you approach it?
I see it as valuable.
Yeah,
even if I don't see them again, and I just only have them on Instagram now. But like, what was it? I'm going to have an example because whatever. I asked to hang out with a girl, and we went for beers and we just chatted. We had like only met once at like a dinner party. This was all before COVID. And then, but like I connected with her in this like Christmas party, and I was like, oh, she seems like a cool person. I want to hang out with her. I want to be her friend. And then we went for beers, and then nothing really came of it. Like, we didn't become like friends that actually hang out all the time, but I actually remember things from that conversation that has shaped me now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like especially she's also a nurse, and so the way she expressed why she wants to be a nurse, like, it totally was like, yeah, that's what I've been trying to say but not been able to say it. Like, you know what I mean? Yes. So like, learning from people and going for coffee for them, even if it's just as a friend or even as with intentions romantically, like, I don't know, you could still learn a lot from them, and it could shape your perspective, like what you said about bettering your perspective almost too. Because if you're stuck in the same bubble, then it doesn't get better sometimes.
Yeah, or you just harden your views even more. Yeah, if that's all you see. Like, the one thing I talk about as well is, like, the majority of our online realities are curated in a sense. It's when you're looking at shoes online at one website, all your ads become shoes for that website. The same way, like, my Instagram Explore page is going to be entirely different from yours. Mm-hmm. But you and I both might love gardening, right? Where it's like, if I have a question, again, these are examples. Although that sounds like you're a good farmer.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Landlord reviewed. But for that example, where it's like, if I have a question about green beans or how to string a tomato plant onto the hockey stick, like whatever it is, I went over to my mom's friend's house because the guy loves bikes. Aww. And I was like, hey man, I can't figure out what's wrong with my bike. Like, I'm at my wit's end. And he looked at it, troubleshot it for half an hour, and was like, I can't figure it out. If I had more time, I would. And then we stood around for an hour and talked about hockey. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I came over here for bikes, but you're right. Like, if you can better your perspective or just have those conversations, you go home going, hey, that was fun. Like, that was nice.
Yeah.
Might not see that guy for the rest of the summer. Like,
Yeah.
I think people are so quick to write off these other people that go, oh, that was a waste of my time, or that person was dumb. That's you choosing to think that perspective. Even that person was genuinely like a moron or had some egregious statements. At least if you can try and piece together what they told you, you can have an idea of how they arrived at their ideas and their thoughts and their convictions.
Mm-hmm.
Just tired of it. I hate people. No, I love people.
I think you do have a love-hate relationship with them.
I just, I don't know. Like, here's another concept that I tried to explain to somebody the other day is, can you be humble and confident / cocky?
Yeah.
How?
um, I think of them kind of differently in the way of like, to be confident. I don't like the word cocky, but like,
Yeah,
you're
no, he's confident.
you're confident in who you are, what you want in life, and for yourself and for others. It's just like a state of being almost.
Yes.
But when you're humble, it's more like, it's almost better to be humble because you're confident almost, right? So you don't need people's validation. You know how amazing you are.
But no, but that's,
You know what I mean? Like, so that you can do
I
things.
do. Finally, somebody, I'm trying to like, I'm holding my breath here. I'm like, oh my goodness, finally somebody understands how I see, because what I run into all the time, people are like, you got to humble yourself, or like, you're not humble enough. And I'm like, let's get two things straight right off the bat. I was like, probably more humble than most people in general. Whether you agree with it or not is up to you, and that's fine. That's how life works. But that's how I see it. As humble is your ability to have a perspective on life where you're okay with asking for help, you're okay with sharing your emotions, you understand the perspective of what you own, what you have, what you're grateful for, and also the people who, by whatever metric, are above you, but also below you, where you can go, I need to help the people who are below me, but I also don't need, I don't need a yacht, or I don't need these things. What I really value are the relationships in my life, the people in my life, my ability to ride my bike, whatever those little things are. Like, that to me is being humble, like your ability to shift your perspective in any moment to try and be empathetic. Like, that's a big part of being humble. But at the same time, like, as I explained it to my sister, there's things I can do that people can't. I was like, come and try and run with me, try and ride your bike with me, try and keep up to me in a conversation, these other things, whether I'm right or wrong, up to other people to decide. But don't tell me that I'm not confident, or that I can't be confident and be humble at the same time, because they're separate to me. Because also, if you're confident and you're humble, you will learn from your failures better than you will mope in them. And you will realize that your wins are that much greater. You realize also what it is from whatever metric you want to use for your wins, but that will further your approach. It'll further your sense of being humble because you've had those experiences. But yeah, I was also extremely confident, and that's why I won. Or, I already had listed out everything. Like, it was a perfect day, whatever competition or whatever metric it was. So yeah, you're like one of the first people. I mean, I haven't talked to a whole lot of people about it, but I don't know, I'm kind of fed up with people telling me who I am and what I am. And then I go to explain these things, and people do agree from time to time, but like, what kills me is when people just, oh, well, you're like, when they see my confidence and then I fail, they go, you're not humble. And I'm like, no, I failed extremely confidently. Doesn't mean I'm not humble. It just means it's going to suck a little bit more to peel myself up off the ground.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about it a little bit more. But the one thing too that comes to mind when I think of humble is like not less value of me, just less focus on me.
Yes, selflessness,
Right?
in a sense. So you're talking about, or no?
Yeah. But at the same time, people can say that then you're just always giving your energy to everyone all the time, or where am I going with this? Of like,
So would it be your ability to be empathetic towards people, or would it be your ability to have the dual perspective in the sense you understand kind of who you are and where you're at in that moment, but you're also doing your best to understand where that other person is?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So like in my mind, yeah, like I said before, we can retract these statements later. But like in my mind, to be confident in who you are and where you are in life, it's just where you are mentally. But and then to be humble is to maybe not always direct the conversation to yourself. You know what I mean? And it's to
Yeah.
direct it, like, so like you said, being empathetic to other people and stuff like that. So if you are directing it to yourself all the time, then that's showing you that you're not confident almost, because you're wanting validation of who you are from others, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Kind
it
of?
does. No,
Okay.
but that's exactly it. It
Yeah.
even ties into the meeting people for the first time, where it's like, if you go in with that perspective, you're not going to have a bad time. Even if you have a bad time, because you know that's a possibility. You know that it might be sunny from 1 to 3 o'clock and there's a 50% chance of rain for the rest of the day. And you know you're going to the beach at 2. So you have two options in your head. You're going, yeah, today's going to be a great day. It's going to be perfect. I'm going to be drinking on the beach, all these things. And when it rains, what happens? Do you go, woe is me? Like the 50%, this always happens. Like, oh, it was like again. Or do you go, well, we knew there was a possibility. Like there was always a chance it was going to rain. Let's do something else, or let's find another way. Like it's
Let's
not,
go. Let's go dance in the rain, huh?
there you go. Right. Like that was one of the, one thing I say from time to time when people are like, well, what if it rains? Well, we'll get wet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like to shoot yourself in the foot before you even get to these opportunities is a losing mentality in my head. Like sometimes you got to do things that suck just to know who you are, or like push yourself to a point. Like I haven't had a bike this week. It's been one of the reasons my screen time's been up is because my bikes are broken right now. So I have two beautiful looking broken bikes in my garage that I can't ride. And for example, like my average bike ride's 2 hours. And that's probably minimum. Like I did 140K just for fun 3 weeks ago. But for me, it makes me agreeable. It tests my cardio limits, tests my physical limits. But what it does is, by the end of the day, like I don't wear headphones because I'm a psychopath, so I just think all day. But like
Dangerous.
I just come home and I'm like, oh yeah, life's not so bad. Like you pour yourself out into these things, and then you kind of realize a little bit about who you are, how you feel about things. So it's the same thing. If you can do that and think about the other person at the same time, like you're gonna lead a beautiful life, I think. But people just seem to get caught up in what I would call fake problems, in terms of you just got to divide things into what you can control and what you can't. And if you focus more on the things you can control and lay those little foundations down, like imagine this, if I did one of these a week, that's 52 a year. If I do this for 10 years, by 35 I will have, I just already butchered the math. What did I say? 50 a year. 50 or 5, yeah, 50 a year for 10 years, 500 shows. And it's like, okay, but when I look at it now as show number 2, that's not that exciting. Like, way to figure out how Skype worked. Like,
Okay.
like you didn't go to Home Depot and pick out every plant that you were going to plant for your garden, because you were like, damn, I don't garden. I don't know what I want. Like, I don't know how much water and sunshine corn needs. Like, what's the climate like in Nebraska? Is it similar to here? Can I even grow corn? Like, where does corn come from? Like, you have to reverse engineer your thoughts. And I think that's what people aren't doing. And we're just finding ways out to make our lives more comfortable and easier. Or we think making more comfortable and easier. That's what I should say.
Yeah. Life is hard.
That it is.
Yeah. But it sounds like we're figuring it out. Somewhat, right?
All I can ask for. Guy could have a heart attack tomorrow. It could be all over.
Wow.
And they just send you into the dirt. But no, that's the baseline motivation for being a human. trying to survive. Like that's Maslow, first one on the list.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say for everyone, but like as a physical species, it's your one goal is don't die every day. Every day.
It's so sad though.
It's
Like,
not though, because that's what makes it beautiful. Because if you take that, well, imagine if we'll take the opposite. What happens if you live forever?
no, but I'm just saying the way you word it too. Like, why can't every day's goal to be to live or to
Oh
have
no,
life?
certainly. There you go. But there you go. There's another brilliant point. Like that's the perspective. So
Mhm.
for me, like I told my mom once, I'd rather have a locker full of rejection letters and tests I failed, like all of these things
Oh,
hung up, because those were the moments I figured out different things, or those are the times you figure out, why did I fail? How did these things happen? Like when I see a giant trophy case, two things come to mind: greatness, but then I think, is it up there because they're genuinely proud of those accomplishments? Or is that the validation factor?
mm,
Because it's like when I run these races or do these things, A goal is always finish. Baseline, like, or Z goal, I guess. Like whatever you do, your goal is to finish. When you don't finish, it's like somebody just takes a knife to your heart and it's like, sorry, bitch, not today. You're not gonna make it. For me, at least. Um, so, like, yeah, I guess in your perspective, and we can kind of finish on this idea. So for you, yeah, like I guess mine is, yeah, like every day you have a chance to die, and it just is. It becomes more likely every day, whether it's 0.00001%. It's just genuinely more and more likely. And once you hit your older ages, it's basically exponentially increasing in terms of the things that will hurt you. So where do you find your motivation then? And is yours more positive perspective in terms of every day is a chance to live versus mine is like every chance to avoid death? Or
whew.
does that make sense?
It did, but it also was said really quickly. Um,
Well, what motivates you?
to live is what
Yeah.
you're asking. Well,
Yeah. Passion, learning, progress, community. Like what do you think are a few of the things that kind of get you to get up and go, yeah, I'm on the right track in my own head?
it would. Well, for me, it'd be my faith.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And that would be the
So
biggest one.
yeah,
Hey, fair enough.
like, and so yeah, so yeah, it's hard. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Well, but I mean, like, but it probably gives you that driving motivation to show people, your perspective, where it's like, I don't know as much how you feel about it, and I mean, faith is always a complicated one because it's very personal to people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like, I guess at the same time, like, if that is your motivation, like, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that is like,
Yeah.
I'm about as faithless as you can make a person,
Mm-hmm.
but I have some general morale guidelines in my own head that I follow that I think are altruistic. I think that's why everybody chooses these things. But I also think when you die, it lights out. You get one shot. Hopefully, when whoever judges you or the powers in hand or the universe, when the scales get there, it's 51%. Yeah, you were all right. Like you were a good person. 49%, a little bit questionable. We're not really sure what was going on in those moments, but at the end of the day, we really like what you did with your opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Versus then I also think some people have a faith because they need that sense of salvation where there's always going to be a floor for them to fall on. Like their faith will never let them get below that certain point.
You mean like unsaved? Is that what you mean? Or like, or the hell? Is that what you mean? Or
Yeah, the idea of salvation, right? Where it's like, as bad as things are, there's a plan. I need to get through these things. It's my motivation to let the pieces fall as they may. And whether or not I achieve everything I want to, if I carry my life in this sense from day to day, that will make me happy and that will tick all of my boxes internally.
right. Hmm. What was the first one you said? Because that was the second one, right? Or no? You had
Are we
two.
talking about the question I asked you?
Or I think you were giving examples of what, like the two things you thought of when you heard my answer, right?
Oh, well, number one was just a straight thought on its own. Like I don't have a faith.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
what I tell people, and it's not to, I don't say it as much anymore because it sounds like when I say it that I'm not being mean, I guess, but I'm kind of belittling whatever faith that other person may fall. But I find faith in the everyday. Like I find faith in other people, but also like the general beauty within anyone's struggle that is like being a human. Like that for me is such an interesting concept that like I'm not a person who gets bored. I mean, from time to time, sure, but like on the day to day, there's such a vast amount of inflows visually, inflows physically, like all of these things you can take in and try and figure out for yourself how you feel about this experience, I guess.
Right. That's a unique perspective. Not many people have that. Yeah, and I guess for me, it's more of a, because I see the differences in my life with and without faith.
Yes.
Then that is the motivation. So
Yeah.
even with how I feel, or like what I hope for, what I find joy in, the differences that I can now see in hindsight is like, yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track.
Yeah, you can quantify it in a sense to yourself, where you can, you can have those two perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Versus guys like me, where it's like, guy could have a heart attack tomorrow, and people are like, "What is wrong with you? How's that? How's that your motivation? How is that the first thing that came to your mind?"
Well, it also shows that you want to live life to the fullest that way, right?
Yes. My biggest, I don't want to harm anybody, and I don't want to do anything that would genuinely take away from somebody else's experience and add to mine, because I don't think life should be a zero-sum game in that sense. Like if we can all boost each other up, then the world gets better. Versus some people see it as, well, I need to do these things for me. And it's like you become a me monster in a sense, where it's like, no, I'm going to have the biggest house, the best cars, the most, whatever your dream and goal is. And it's like, you can have those things. I'm not saying those things are bad, but you also need to be able to give back to people, whether it's information, your time, your help. Like just show them that you have that capability to share, I guess.
Where does that come from? Like that.
I don't know. I was raised on a lot of TV and sports, and grew up in the Northwest Territories, and then ended up in Alberta, and have been really fortunate to travel to a lot of places. But I just think if you get trapped, for me, it's all about mentality. If you get trapped in a mentality of negativity, it's an instant feedback loop, right? You get a little bit sad, and then you don't go outside today. Okay, well, you didn't go outside today and you didn't exercise. So those are three things that all came from you being sad that morning. So I even, like, there's some runs I go on where I will physically say out loud before I start the run, just be proud of yourself. Because if you just want to do 5K, maybe that's all you need to do today. Yeah. But you got outside because you told yourself to get outside. Now you've exercised. So now you get home and you go, nice. Now you have, say, a healthy meal because you're already thinking about your fitness and your athletics. And then you have that. And then you go, oh, I enjoy cooking. And it's, for me, like, what I think people don't understand is it's harder to create positive feedback loops than it is negative, because it's easy to be in that state. And it's not like I'm a monk. Like, I'm not living in this perfect place of Zen. But again, like, it's just these 10 little changes is all it takes to, like, look outside and go, I mean, we'll take, for example, right now, about a 25 kilometer an hour wind. Not a day you want to be outside if you like golf or tennis or spike ball or anything where the ball is going to be out in the air outdoors.
Yeah.
At the same time, sun shining, about 20 degrees. Doesn't look like there's a lot of clouds, not going to rain. So one of those, if you separate both of those, if I said, yeah, it's windy and it's a terrible day for sports, you don't care that the sun's out, or you might not. Versus if I say the first three things, then you might be, it's a little windy, but I'll hit the ball lower today, or we'll put the spike ball on the other side of the house, or we'll figure something else out. Like, I don't know. In terms of why do I think that way? I don't know. It's a much better way to live, I think, than being able to say, woe is me. And that was my biggest concern when COVID started, was how are the people who genuinely were trying to get their life on a track in even the smallest sense of the way, who were starting to gain the perspective that they weren't in this alone in a global sense and even like a national sense, that now had to be forced to stay indoors and change their life. Masks are everywhere. And again, this is outside of all the information we have, just how they're going to see it. All it's going to take is one negative thought, one negative week for them to end up in this woe is me, anxious state of mind that seemingly can't be broken. So that's why I started this, because I wanted to see how people mentally are trying to adapt when times become so incredibly different. And it's the only time in my life that it's happened to such an extent that it has genuinely affected the global nation. Mm-hmm. And that's an incredibly scary thought, but also an incredibly good perspective for a lot of people to get, whether they like it or not. Because there's going to be a lot of people who are going to hate this and are hating it right now. So I guess, part of me just wants to show them that, like, hey, sun's still shining, grass is still growing. Like, the majority of the people you meet are nice people. Like, just try and get that first foot out the door. All right. Most people are going to try and help you. We'll be patient. We'll get everybody a little bit better in terms of mental and physical health. That's how I feel.
I like it. It's good.
Good. Anyway, this one, I feel like I stole a bit of the airtime, which is a shame, because Beagle, in starting this, was trying to be a better listener.
I know. Actually, do you remember me texting you saying next time we chat, I want to talk about, I don't know, something about how to help other people listen or something like that?
Yes. But it's hard. Like, the reason I don't mind like things like this, and when I, like, part of me feels bad, the other part of me is like, this is a good conversation. So whether you dominate it or I dominate it, neither of us are going to be upset. In the worst case scenario, I can have you on again. Like, it's not a big deal. But the one thing, and like, I've got my list of people I want to ask to be a guest. It's about 20 people. And the one thing that everybody on this list, in my opinion, has in common, yourself included, is we're both able to give each other and match that amount of energy for this hour and a bit. Mm-hmm. So that we both know that's what we're in for, in that sense, in that we can share it. And if I got really fired up for a second there and everything was clicking. So I was like, no, this is why, like, the first thing, for some reason, when you said, why do you think this way? My grade 8 social teacher, I'll never forget this, one of my favorite moments in my life. I answered some question out of the blue. It was on like Japanese or Aztec history, whatever you learn in grade 8. And I was, boom, got it. And she's like, she said to me, what she said was, Alex, you seem to be so smart. You must read a lot of books. And without missing a beat, my response was, I really don't, but I watch a lot of TV. And she was appalled at that answer. And in hindsight, there was two things to it. One, like, how she grew up and where you got information was at the end of a book. There was not mad amount of television. There was not a lot of funding in television. There was not a lot of funding in multimedia, because of that 25-year age difference. And then I thought about, at the same time, the reason I said that is because I was like, no. I'm watching The Daily Show, and then I'm watching The Colbert Report, and I'm watching Family Guy and South Park. And if you strip away the fact that all of those are like comedic television, all of those have to do with social commentary. And what social commentary is, basically current events in real time. It just depends on how those producers of those shows want to do it. So my first thought was like, no, it's not because I don't read, but I'm already thinking about things that are beyond the classroom, or things that I can explore in my spare time, to the point where, like, I understood what the Democrats wanted and the Republicans wanted by the time I was 15, because I had seen enough and gained enough information that I was like, oh yeah, I can see how this goes. So how this ties into my original point is, like, I've just had a lot of these odd experiences. I seem to have a phenomenal memory. And if you can try and dissect how you felt in those moments and really go back and lean into those memories and lean into those experiences, you can start to understand not only who you are, but exactly like you talked about at the start, what you want after you figured out a bit of a baseline of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you need. And a Wi-Fi connection and a laptop.
Yeah, key.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange time to be living. I think, like everything, there can only be more positive that comes out of this than negative, because the opposite is the reversion to the negative, which would mean the global mentality would turn into this negative feedback loop. And it's impossible. It's not a sustainable way to live, I think.
And I'm excited. Like I'm stoked of like moving forward because of like this change in perspective because of COVID and like what's valuable to you. I feel like everyone's becoming good boundaries and actually living into things that give them life or get like make them
Yeah.
happier, right? So then it's like exciting in my mind to see where people will end up and where they're gonna go.
Things got to get worse before they get better. It's
Yeah.
like it's one of those sayings that you hate, but yeah, it's. I'm gonna cut it here because like I'm gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah.
The gears are turning, and I just thought about this thought, but it's not a complete one, and it's not the right time.
Okay.
But I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully I didn't steal too much airtime. I have to have you on at some other point. But any last, because I like to, this is supposed to be a show all about the guests. So I'll turn to you for any last words or anything you want to say, or hey, if not, that works too.
Yeah. Nothing else really other than keep doing this. This is cool.
Lovely.
This is exciting.
Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm gonna end this call for administration purposes on the recording. So just smile and wave.